there, Christopher Schlegel here. I recently finished writing, arranging, and recording an electric guitar instrumental piece, and while the process was still fresh on my mind, I wanted to document it, or some of it, try to give you a little bit of insight into how I compose, arrange, and record, how I create music. So I've got 3 videos planned here. I've got one that will cover the composition, this current one, and then I'll talk a little bit about arranging, and then I'll talk about recording. Those 3 parts are very closely related and they overlap a great deal, but I'm going to break them into those 3 because composition is just coming up with the big ideas, the thematic ideas, the melodic ideas that I will use as the raw materials, the building blocks. And then the second part is arranging, where I take those basic thematic ideas and I knock them into shape. I make a plan of action or a blueprint, a plan that shows me how I want to get to the third stage, which is recording. So I'll take those ideas and that blueprint, and then I will start to record them and try to make a finished audio sample, a finished product that you can listen to, that's music, right? So in this first video, composition. I compose in 2 different ways, without an instrument and with an instrument. Without an instrument, it's a little bit more of a abstract type of situation. I'm just thinking about music. I'm thinking about scale patterns and chords and how certain melodic fragments might be harmonized certain ways. Also, when I've got demos or partially finished products, I'll put them on my mobile communication device and listen to them in the car, right? Or sometimes I'm just thinking about how musical structures could possibly work, new ideas for songs. Like, for example, when I'm having a conversation with somebody and I'm not really listening, I'm just thinking about music. But my favorite way to compose is, of course, with an instrument in my hand. Guitar, piano are my primary instruments that I write on. This particular piece was written on the guitar for the guitar. And I do that oftentimes by just paying attention to what sounds good when I'm warming up. So when I pick up a guitar for the first time in the morning, or anytime I pick up a guitar, I start by warming up my fingers, just play some chords. But I like to play chords that have some kind of musical context. I like to have some musical meaning behind the chords, not just random chords, because that helps warm up my ear and my mind for music. And so I'll play some chords that go together. In this case, I was playing minor key chords that went together. And I also play scale fragments. So I played some minor scales too that were related to. So instead of just playing scales straight up and down, that sort of thing has value in getting your fingers warmed up. But I like to try and put some musical sense into it, like maybe sequence the scale. So in this case, I was playing patterns in 4s. Right, just going up the scale and then coming back down. So after a while, after I get warmed up, then I start to put chords and scales together and listen for something that's interesting. See if there's anything there that I might be able to come up with a thematic idea to use in a song later on. So in this case, I was playing this minor chord thing like this. I was like, that's pretty neat, right? So then I started playing through the sequence of chords that are in that key with similar scale fragments. Right, yeah. And then maybe back down the... So I thought that was pretty neat. You know, I came up with that little idea, and I kind of took that and put it on the back burner and thought, I'll maybe develop that later. But what I really thought was a neat idea was just take each one of those chords and scale fragments and kind of develop it more. See if I can put some more meat on those bones, right? So that little idea there. So I started with some more scale fragments. I'm like, that's neat. Let's put the next chord. So I'm just sequencing the scale with the chord that goes with it. Right? And then I thought, hey, here's a good place for a secondary dominant. Little drama. Okay, then your dominant chord. And then back down the scale, you know. So I had these kind of rough ideas that I had played around with a little bit. Now, if I like an idea, I'll record it or I'll remember it so that the next morning or the next time I pick up the guitar to practice, I'll play around with those ideas. And I know that an idea is good enough to keep developing into a song or an instrumental piece if an idea has legs, if I keep coming back to it, if I keep remembering it. And this particular little fragment, this melodic little fragment, was something that I kept coming back to. And at one point I developed it finally into something I really liked, this little cell here. I was like, that's really neat. I like that. Let's see if I can develop that with the other chords and the sequential scale sequences. So I started with the 1 chord. Then I went to the 5 chord. Keep going up. That's cool, right? I'm liking this a lot. Yeah, then the secondary. 5 of 5 and then 5. And then back down back down there to so all the way up and then all the way back down. I was having a lot of fun with it. But I still didn't exactly like how it worked, so I thought I'm just going to take that first little fragment. I'm going to regard that as one little melodic cell. I liked it a lot because it had a really neat melodic arc to it. First of all, it starts on a low A and then goes arpeggio up, ascending real quick, and then back down. Okay, so it has its own little harmonic motion all by itself, right? It has a 1 and a 5 chord. I'm implying. And then back down. Okay, so a lot of the things that I develop, if I find them interesting, and the reason I find them interesting and what I'm looking for, is something that has its own little musical context that I can build other contexts onto into a whole composition. So that was a neat idea that has its own little musical purpose, right? It's got a 1-5-1 sort of idea. So then I thought, you know what? I'm going to develop just that idea a little bit more. And I thought, I know what I'll do. That's a 2-measure phrase, and it has a sort of a gallop rhythm to it, right? 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3. So 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3. Da-da-dun, da-da-dun. So I need something that contrasts with that a little bit. So I just tried to come back down the scale after doing it once. Something like that. Eventually, I came up with this pedal point idea that was neat. I went... And that comes right back down to the A to start again. And I like that because it also has harmonic goal-directed action inside of it, right? It's just a little pedal point idea, but by starting on the D, and then going to the E, and then the D sharp, and then back all the way down the scale, it implies chord motion. It implies a D, 4 chord, and then a 1 chord, and then a 5 of 5, right, a B, and then back down from a 5 chord. So I've got 2 little cells to connect. I've got a call and an answer sort of phrase there, but I'm really starting to think, you know what? That 4 measures is really just a call all by itself. And a lot of times a melodic phrase or a whole melody becomes complete in my mind if it has a call and an answer, if it has some kind of call and response, a question and an answer. So I was thinking of this one as definitely the question phrase, the first phrase. And then I'm going to start again. So I'll start with the first little cell. Now I need a way to answer the whole thing. A 4th little cell to tack on to the end of that to help me start the whole process again or go to the next theme. And eventually I came up with this little idea to start up here on the F again, but to use a whole sequence of dyads down. And I like that a lot because it's a different way of coming back down the scale to start again. And this is something else that I'm always looking for in music that I like to listen to as well as music I like to create. Something that is similar and something that has variety. So you want similarity so it's integrated with all the other stuff, It's mutually reinforcing, but you want enough variety so that it sounds different, right? It pulls your attention away and then it brings you back. So this contrast is something that's very valuable in composition to me, okay? A call and an answer, it's a great contrast with different little sections as well as dynamics, high and low, quiet and loud. So this is eventually what I wound up with. 4 little cells that come together in theme 1, okay? There you go. That was theme number 1, okay? And I played around with that a lot. I goofed around with it. And I thought, now I need a theme number 2, because I need at least 2 sections to a piece of music, right? I like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, but you need at least 2 for contrast, right? So the first thing I thought of, well, how about if I just take that entire thing and move it to major? Let's do a relative major thing. Let's start at C. And then maybe a 5. This is pretty neat, right? So I thought that's kind of neat. I like that. I'm going to take that and put it on the back burner. Maybe that'll be theme 3 or 4 down the road, but I don't like it for a secondary theme, something strong that will contrast directly to theme 1. So then I thought I'm going to go to the subdominant. I'm going to take the entire thing and put it in D. So I did the first one, and then the second half of it to, and then up to D. Just transpose the whole thing up there. See what happens. And I thought, you know what, that's pretty neat. I don't think it's the best idea, but again, let's put it over on the back burner and hold on to it for a little bit longer, and maybe I can develop it later. Eventually, I hit on the idea of playing a different theme on the dominant, starting on 1 and going directly to 5. And it worked really well because what I start to develop here is kind of a neoclassical idea, right? It's electric guitar stuff, but it's kind of based in that old school Beethoven stuff I really like, right? So eventually, after this, I hit on the idea of starting on the 5 chord, right? And then I had a neat idea there because it's thematically integrated with the previous theme, okay? It's a different chord, and it's a different way of doing things, but it's similar because it starts with an arpeggio up, and then a scale fragment down, right? And later on I said, you know what, let's just get rid of the scale fragment down. Let's just go up, and then up, and then up again, and then let's go down. That's a good answer. Then start again. And then do the first phrase. Now I need an answering phrase. And I thought, this is where I need to go to that secondary dominant. And that's a great way to land on the 5 to get back to the 1. Okay, so now I have 2 things. I have theme 1 and theme 2. Okay? And I thought, this is great. I've got this. And then second theme. How about if I put it in a different octave up here? Pretty neat, huh? I like it. Then the ending of that. And then maybe some way to get back into the theme number 1, okay? So I've got 2 themes. And this is great. This is perfect. I'm going to play these back and forth a lot and see what else I can come up with. Eventually, I realized that those 2 previous themes I had on the back burner, theme 3 and 4 potentially, right? The relative major and the subdominant. Eventually, I realized that the subdominant one would sound really neat if I went from theme 1 to theme 2, back to theme 1, and then to theme 3, I went to this. And I even changed the rhythm a little bit so that it wasn't so similar. I wanted something that's thematically similar, but I changed the rhythm up. I was trying to find some way of making it more interesting, right? And I just basically came up with a straight rhythm of. and a little bit more rushed at the end, straight eighth notes, right? So it's a little bit different. It's similar, but it's different. And then after a while, I was playing different chords starting on the D, on the 4 chord, and I came up with a completely different progression. And some of it was related to just singing melodies in my head along with the chords. Eventually, I came up with this neat idea of going from the D to a B flat, a flat 6 chord. Right, and then kind of a cycle 5 thing. And then over to the C, the flat 7, then a 5. That's a neat way to get back to it, right? And then 1 again. Or in this case, the 4. Flat 6. Now, I kept doing that over and over again, but eventually I thought, you know what would sound neat is if I had a way to climb all the way from out of that D back up to E to get back to A. So I started working my way backwards. I started thinking E, and then a B, and then a D, and then an A, and then a E, and then an A. So there's a 5. So here's 1 chord, 2 chords. I'm just literally counting chords. 3 chords, 4 chords, 5, 6, 7. Oh! Aha! If I start on the G minor, which is the 4 of the 4, then I can have this complete cycle that goes back all the way to theme 1. So, with that in mind, I started theme 3 like this. I started to develop it like this. And then to the 6, to the 3, the 7, the 5. Start again on the 4. Right now. Then right there was where I counted that I need to come from G, and then to 5 of the A, and then 1, and then 5, and then the 1 again. 4, 5 of 5, 5. And then I can wind my way back down the scale. From there I can, start all over and back into theme 1. So at this point, the compositional process is coming to a close. I've got 3 strong themes. I've got theme 1, right? And that leads strongly into theme 2. Leads right back into theme 1. And eventually that sounds really neat going into the theme 3. Etc., right? And I've also got a relative major variation I can throw in there for a 4th theme. And so at this point I'm starting to move into the arrangement phase. Okay, and these things overlap, right? And sometimes I'll go back and if I don't like when I'm arranging things, if I don't like how it's turning out, I'll go back to the compositional process and come up with something new. Or sometimes I'll start arranging it while I'm composing. You'll notice there I was starting to think of how are these sections going to fit together? How will one section flow into the next? What's the 5 of this chord? What is harmonically appropriate here? What's a good variation for this? What's similar? What's a variety? So, these things overlap a great deal, but at this point, I've got the 3 main themes, theme 1, 2, and 3, that I'm going to use as the backbone of the composition. So, I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to that. And in the next video, we'll talk a little bit more about arrangement.